Hello, everyone. This is the Quiz 8 review. We're going to start with, we have three problems here, starting with number 1. We're given this function, f of x equals x minus 3 over x squared plus 14x plus 40. And we want to find the numbers that are not in the domain. Find the x values that are not in the domain. To determine which values are not in the domain, we want to look for the values of x that would make this denominator equal 0. So to solve this problem, you want to take your denominator, whatever that may be. In this case, we have x squared plus 14x plus 40. We want to set that equal to 0. And then we're going to solve, factor and solve. So factoring on the left side, when we're given a trinomial and the leading coefficient is 1, we're going to factor that first term using x and x. X times x gives us this x squared. And to determine what the last two numbers are, we have to find two numbers that meet the conditions, right? We want them to have a product of 40, right? And then we want them to have a sum of 14. So two numbers where when you multiply them together, you get 40, but when you add them, you get 14, and that would be 4 times 10. 4 times 10 gives us 40, and 4 plus 10 gives us 14. So we'll put plus 4 in one factor and plus 10 for the other factor equals 0. Now to solve this equation, we're going to set each of these factors equal to 0 and solve. So x plus 4 equals 0, or x plus 10 equals 0. So x plus 4 equals 0 or x plus 10 equals 0. We're going to solve both equations. On the left side, we're subtracting 4 from both sides of that equation. We'll get x equals negative 4. Or on the right side, we're going to subtract 10 from both sides of this equation. X equals negative 10. So to answer this question, what are the values of x that are not in the domain? 4 and 10, or negative 4, I should say, and negative 10. Any other number we could substitute for x except for negative 4 or negative 10. Now for question 2, we're dividing these two expressions. And remember, when you're dividing by a fraction, it's the same as multiplying by its reciprocal. So we're going to change this operation from division to multiplication, and we're going to take the reciprocal of that second fraction. So all of these terms that are in the denominator, we'll move them to the numerator, and all of the terms that are in the numerator will move to the denominator. To solve, we are going to be factoring. If you look at your numerator of the fraction on the left side, this is a difference of perfect square terms. X squared minus 16, where our a term is x. What do we square in order to get x squared? Is x times x. And our b term would be 4. We multiply 4 times 4 to get 16. So in our numerator, we're factoring the difference of perfect squares, x squared minus 16, using x plus 4 and x minus 4. In our denominator, we have a trinomial with a leading coefficient of 1. So we are going to factor the first two terms in these factors. Is going to be x and x. Now to get the last numbers, we want to find two numbers that multiply to give us negative 12, but when we add them, we get negative 1. So multiply to be negative 12, a sum of negative 1 will be 4 and 3. We want our 4 to be negative. So -4 and +3. We can multiply those two together and get -12. And if we add them, we would get -1. All right, so let's look at the fraction on the right side. Remember, the denominator is going to move to the numerator. So that -8x plus 32, we want to factor that greatest common factor, the GCF. What can we divide into -8x and 32? We can actually divide 8 into both of those terms. So we're going to factor 8. Remember, factoring is the same thing as dividing. So that's what we're doing. Those terms here. Now, what we notice when we go to factor -8x by 8, we'll get a -x. And if you look at your factors on the left side, which eventually we need to cancel out some of these common terms, we don't have any minuses in front of the x. So instead of just factoring out +8, we're going to factor out -8. That means we're dividing both of these by -8. And -8x divided by -8 will give us x. 32 divided by -8 will be -4. And remember, the numerator moves to the denominator. And 16x and 64 can both be factored by 16. We can divide 16 into 16x, we'll get x. And 64 divided by 16, we'll get +4 here. Now we want to cancel out any common factors that are diagonal to each other or on top of each other, right? So we can cancel out a pair of x minus 4s, x minus 4, x minus 4. We can also cancel out a pair of x plus 4s, x plus 4 and x plus 4. So what we're left with are two top terms, -8 times x minus 4 in the numerator, and 16 times x plus 3 in the denominator. And then for problem number 3, we're subtracting these two fractions, but in order to subtract, remember, we have to have common denominators. So we got to find the common denominator. We want to rewrite both of these fractions so that they have the same denominator. Okay, so in our first fraction, what we see, we have 2w³ y squared. In the denominator of the second fraction, we have 4w³ y. The 2 and the 4, the least common multiple between 2 and 4 would be 4. Okay, so we want 4 to be in our denominators for that numerical part, right? This denominator of the fraction on the right already has 4, but the fraction on the left side does not. So that means we have to multiply that fraction on the left by 2. And since we're multiplying by 2 in the denominator to get the 4, we have to also multiply the numerator times 2. Our w's, our common factor of w's would be w³, and they both already have w³. So right next to the 4, we're going to write w³. And then the y terms, we have y squared on the left and 1y on the right. They need to have the same power. We can make this y on the right side become a y squared if we multiply it by y. Y times y would make this a y squared. So that's what we want in our denominators, w³ and y squared next to the 4. And keep in mind that when you multiply that denominator by y, you must also multiply the numerator by y. So our numerator on the left, 4 times 2 would be 8. The numerator on the right, 6 times y would be 6y. Once you get this common denominator, then you can subtract. We keep the denominator the same. So 4w³ y squared will remain in the denominator. And then we'd subtract 8 minus 6y in the denominator. This is our solution. So this is what your quiz 8 would look like. Good luck on the quiz.